So a lot of the times growing up, the people I would talk to in my church would be like, if you believe in the theory of evolution, you do not believe in God. But my argument was, what if evolution is a course created by God?
Yeah.
Like God starts the spark, lights the fuse, and as it burns, like a bomb when you see in the cartoons when it's burning down this long thing. What if that is the pathway of creation by God, that things would evolve over time to suit the needs of the species?
Right.
But I guess in their mind, they're like, any creature currently alive on this planet right now, God was literally like platypus, giraffe, gorilla, and that's it.
All right, welcome back to Mildly Alarmed. I'm one of your hosts, Nina Likes, here with my co-host, Justin Bullock. This week on what we're now calling Make It Make Sense, which is going to be our political and cultural segment. We're getting a little personal again, talking about our own journeys with religion and politics and how we got to where we are today. It's the first part of a bigger conversation we're going to be having next week as well about Christianity, Donald Trump, and the Republican Party. So you're going to want to stick around for that one too. I think the thing that sparked the conversation this week was because you and I have a lot of political and religious conversations on the side in our own personal lives. You know, it was really thinking about how people could claim to be good Christians, but also support the mass murder of people in another country, or even, you know, support our own soldiers just risking their lives for not clearly stated goals. So in thinking about that conversation, I think we got back to the idea of like, well, let's track our own personal journeys first. Let's go back and think about how we got to where we are with politics and religion. So let's go back to like when we were kids first. Like what do you remember first about growing up and the role that religion played in your life?
It was huge. It was massive. Growing up, I grew up a Southern Baptist here in Fuquay-Varina, North Carolina. And it was a huge part of our upbringing, me and my sister both. As for me, generationally, we all went to the same church. My grandma went there. My mom went there. My dad wasn't religious. He didn't go to church, but it was very much something that Mom forced us to do. But at the time, it seemed normal. It just seemed like something you did. Growing up here in North Carolina, Fuquay, everyone I knew went to church. I didn't really know any kids that kind of didn't. That would have seemed weird. It would have been, that would have just been off. But you know, I went to school with a lot of the same people that I also went to church with. So it was just a very kind of a normal thing that you kind of just did, was just go to church. And we were always there. We were actually front row Baptists. We were right there on the second row.
Is that a particular designation?
Yeah, we were front row Baptists. We weren't the back row Baptists. I mean, we were front and center. My grandma sat there on the second row. I sat with her, and my mom sang in the choir. We were involved. We would go to church on Wednesday night to do choir practice. I was in the choir. My sister was in the choir, youth groups, and that sort of thing. So it was very much a part of our weekly routine. And all of my family members were religious. You know, it was a huge part of my childhood and memories was being at church. And my kind of community around me were all church people. I didn't really, other than school, I didn't talk to anybody else other than the church.
Was your dad not going to church a source of conflict, or was it just kind of accepted when you were a kid?
It was a source of conflict. So Sundays, he would go play golf, which he played golf all the time. But he was a huge golfer. He'd rather be doing that than anything else, including hanging out with me. But so he would go play a ton of golf, and Mom would take us to church and those kinds of things. But he didn't go. And, you know, I remember Mom talking about that when we were young, about just, you know, your dad doesn't go to church and you don't want to end up like him.
In what sense?
He's going to hell in a handbasket. He's going to hell in a handbasket. You don't want to end up like him. He's no good son of a bitch. Doesn't go to church. He's that kind of thing. It was very much a source of contention that he didn't go.
Interesting.
I'm thinking of a memory. I had a memory, like, because I believed it so strongly. This is going to sound funny. And I remember this. It's just one of those things that popped in my head. I remember one night, it was a big deal because Dad was going to be going to church with us, but it was like a Sunday night service. And I remember being at my grandma's for some reason, and he was picking us up. And I remember him coming to pick us up. And as he's putting us in the car, he like cuts his hand on something, like slices his hand like open, like across the palm here. And there's lots of blood. And I remember thinking, because my grandma said something, I think it was my grandma who said it. She was like, that must be Satan trying to keep him from going to the church because he's injured his hand, and now we have to stop and we're going to be late for the service because we have to figure this palm injury out. And I remember her telling me, you see that, kids? That was Satan. Satan did that.
Interesting.
So that your dad wouldn't go because Satan's afraid that your dad going to church is going to make him religious all of a sudden. That was Satan. I remember that.
So we've gotten Satan in hell already.
Yes.
A few times in this conversation.
Listen, you can't talk about being Baptist without talking about Satan in hell. You can't do it.
It's just a part of going to church as a Baptist?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
How so?
It's what it's all about, man. It's like if you don't adhere to the rules, man, fire and brimstone, going to hell. Going down there will be Beelzebub. Yeah. So
how long did you go to church, like, continually?
Too long. It was probably from the moment I was born to college.
Okay.
But in college, though, like, I was probably 22, 23 when I stopped going regularly, maybe younger than that. Long time. Over 20 years, one could easily say. Over 20 years.
Okay. Yeah, I did not make it that long, but I also didn't really grow up in the same way. So you were raised down here. I was raised in Connecticut.
Right. You heathens up there in Connecticut.
Yeah.
What's it like growing up with all them sinners?
So I grew up in a family that was Catholic for the most part, but my mom went to Catholic school. She eventually decided to convert and become Protestant at one point. So I'm technically baptized Protestant. So I kind of grew up Protestant in a family of Catholics, which was interesting because I think I heard a lot of both. And like Northern Protestant is definitely not Southern Protestant. Like Northern Protestant, you still cared about the Pope for some reason. There was just like, I think Catholicism was so prevalent in the North for some reason, or potentially just in my family. But I felt like I just ran into a lot of Catholics that eventually they kind of just merged and commingled to the point where you got like a little bit of various flavors of Christianity a lot. And we went to some different churches. Like we went to a Protestant church. I think at one point we went to a Universalist church.
What is a Universalist
or Unitarian
church?
or one of them.
What is that?
They're all flavors of Protestant for the most part. They're still very much about like the book and not the institution like Catholicism is. So, but I stopped going when I was like 12. My mom asked me, do you want to keep going to church? And I remember telling her, no, I don't particularly like the way they treat women, and I don't really want to be a part of it anymore.
At 12?
At 12. So I don't know what flavor of Christianity I was going to at that particular time, but it was not the church that I grew up in. And I just remember there was a good vibe at the church I grew up in, which was this nice Protestant church in Bolton in Connecticut. The pastor there was great. But the whatever church we were going to later on, I just did not like for whatever reason, which was odd because I did like sing in the choir and things, which I enjoyed doing. So it's kind of interesting that I was still like, even though I enjoyed that so much, I'm like, nah, I just don't want to be a part of this anymore. And so I stopped going around like 12 or 13. And then I don't think I really ever went back. I found different forms of religion in college, mainly
that wasn't an option
Buddhism.
for us.
Yeah.
We didn't have the option of like, do you actually like this? Do you want to stop going? Would you rather do something else? Like that was not an option. That was not an option. I would have gotten in a lot of trouble for suggesting that, maybe this isn't for me. Maybe there's a better calling out there for me. I'm searching myself and I'm reflecting.
But you did question it, didn't you?
All
what
the time.
happened when you did?
Like I was, I don't know what it is about me, but my entire life, I have never been one to just, okay, what you say to me must be true. Maybe I have really bad trust issues. I don't know, but like back then, but I have never, just been like 100% like, yeah, that must be it. So I questioned a lot of things that I was told, and more so out of curiosity. I like asking questions. You know
Yeah.
me, I like to talk to people, and I'm a curious mind anyway. I like to learn about things, I like to read about things, I like to hear people's stories and
Yeah.
interests. So, I would ask questions, which I thought were good questions, innocent questions. I got in trouble all the time for asking these questions. Like, just stop asking, just because, just go in there because, just listen to them, it's Jesus and God, it's the truth. There's
Do you
no
remember any of the
questioning it.
questions?
No
Remember any of the
question.
questions
I
you
do.
asked?
Like, I remember one that from a young perspective, I love dinosaurs. And so I remember asking a Sunday school teacher one time, where did the dinosaurs fit into the story? Because, God created the heavens and the earth and it happened in 6 days. Like, where do the dinosaurs fit into the story?
That's
I remember that
adorable.
was something I was really curious about. And then they gave me kind of a strange answer, though. They were like, well, there's these things in the book called like behemoths or leviathans, and suggesting that perhaps dinosaurs coexisted with people, which we know is not true. We know that's crazy. But it was just more of that, like, the earth is 6,000 to 7,000 years old kind of theory, if you take it literally. But anyway, that was a question I would ask. And then I would ask about, like, well, if you have free will, if God knows everything you're going to do, then why do you also, have the free will to choose if it's already preordained or predetermined, or rather, I would ask things like that. And then, how could God allow terrible things to happen if he had the power to stop them? And why some people have really bad things happen to them, like get murdered. And they'd be like, well, having bad things happen to people getting murdered, it's all part of this. It's predetermined and
Part of the plan.
it's part of the plan. There's a reason why these things happen. We just don't know the reason would be the answer. So yeah, I would question those kinds of things like all the time, just things that would enter into my brain and be like, wait a minute, I got a question about this. A lot of the times, that was frowned upon. Don't ask questions, just accept it as truth.
Yeah. It's interesting you bring up the dinosaurs because I feel like down here, from just what I've gathered living in South Carolina and then in North Carolina versus Connecticut, I feel like all of the religions that I encountered in Connecticut, all the flavors of Christianity up there were very like still pro-science. And I think Catholicism has come around to that idea and the like newer generations of it too, where like those things can coexist and the Bible shouldn't be taken literally. But from what I've seen down here and from what you've told me in the past, it seems like the Bible is taken much more literally down here than it is in the north.
It's interesting you mentioned that. I just remembered something that like it makes me laugh now, but the scandal that it was when we'd be in Sunday school and you're around the 8th grade, I think. My science teacher, Mr. Hyman, good dude, started teaching The Theory of Evolution by Charles Darwin. And
of course,
the scandal of what that was, and being told in Sunday school, like, the school has to teach you that, but it's not true. It's bollocks.
Did they have a reason why they would be teaching you something false?
Because it's all part of that secularism, It's the world's science and opinion, but it's not true. That's what the world wants you to believe. That's what school systems have to tell you.
To what
but
end?
we all know the truth. God created the heavens and the earth, and we lived with dinosaurs. And Jesus used dinosaurs, like the Flintstones would use the dinosaurs. No, yeah, I remember the being told in Sunday school and things like that everything I was learning in school wasn't the truth. I was getting the truth at church. I wasn't getting the truth at school. But I had to play the game because that's what it was. But we didn't come from monkeys. We didn't come from monkeys. Which I think is always really funny to me. Like, in their mind, there is, because I remember like having these conversations with like older people at church and trying to explain to them the theory of evolution and kind of like how that works. And I remember their argument was like, we didn't come from a monkey. But I would be like, well, it's not that there's a monkey sitting there that suddenly becomes a human. Like, that's not how it works. That's not
Yeah.
how it worked. There are many types of species of monkey. We just happen to be one of those along a line of changes and adaptations over a course of time. We didn't just, because they were like, well, how come, I got you a question. How come gorillas don't turn into people? It's like, well, they're not going to. They're not going to turn into people.
I don't
They're
know.
gorillas.
If you look a gorilla in the eye, you can see the humanity there. I don't care who you are. Go look a gorilla in the eye.
Can I tell you something? One time I was at the zoo and I was sitting there. The gorillas kind of, I will be honest, kind of freaking me out because I almost look at them and I feel like they shouldn't be
behind bars.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's too close because I remember I was sitting there and I was watching a gorilla do like this. And I was like, hell, I do that 100 times a day. Just pick at my fingers or something like that. I'm like, I do that all the time. And I was watching a gorilla literally do that. And I was like, ooh. I was like, I don't know how I feel about this.
I feel that way too. This is a tangent, but I saw a gorilla at the South Carolina Zoo in Columbia, I think. And his name was Patrick, which is my cousin's name. And he was exactly my age. And what was really funny is that it was a really rainy day. So my ex and I were the only two people there. And every time I would talk to this gorilla named Patrick, he would look at me and he would seem to have some interest in at least my tone of voice or whatever it was that I was saying. And then my ex would try to talk to him and he would look away. And he just had no interest in talking to my ex. And I just thought it was hilarious that he had made a choice.
Yeah.
To listen to me for whatever reason and just had no interest in listening to this other person. And I was like, something about it. Something about that you can almost see the intelligence.
Yeah.
And I don't
recognition.
Know. It always just
yeah.
It freaks me out when people think that evolution isn't real because I feel like you can almost see it.
That gorilla is still out there and still wants to hear the sound of your voice. Please like and subscribe to that gorilla. No, yeah, it's funny how looking back on it, how the theory of evolution, and sometimes I feel like they call it that, the theory of evolution, so that it doesn't have because if something's a theory, then it's not quite proven. And I think they would always say that, the theory. They would say it with kind of a tone. But I always thought it was funny, debating things. Because wouldn't you agree, this is, I know this is getting someplace else, but would you agree that adaptation and evolution are kind of the same? To adapt is almost also to evolve? Because I was talking to a dude, a conservative dude one time, and he was like, I believe in adapting, but I don't believe in evolving. So he was like, we can adapt, but we can't evolve. And I was like, what do you, to me, they're similar.
They are definitely similar.
Because evolution is just adaptations over time. And then the species evolves to its needs.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I think adaptations are more things that happen in the moment. Evolution, kind of like you said, is just the process of incorporating those adaptations over time so that they're no longer adaptations. They're just part of the actual person.
That was a big debate in the Sunday schools. And of course I would get in trouble for that because I would debate on the side of evolution, things can evolve. But my argument was that God didn't. So a lot of the times growing up, the people I would talk to in my church would be like, if you believe in the theory of evolution, you do not believe in God. Hard stop, period, dot. That's end of story. But my argument was, what if evolution is a course created by God?
Yeah.
God starts the spark, lights the fuse, and as it burns, like a bomb when you see in the cartoons when it's burning down this long thing. What if that is the pathway of creation by God, that things would evolve over time to suit the needs of the species?
Right.
But I guess in their mind, they're like, any creature currently alive on this planet right now, God was literally like, platypus, giraffe, gorilla, deer, spiders, and that's it. Just dropping things here and created everything, and that's it. Nothing changes.
Interesting, because I feel like your description of evolution is more what we're taught in the North. That God set the table.
Yeah.
And the pieces evolved on the board game of life.
Right. See, that makes sense to me.
Yeah, the things can coexist.
Yeah, things can coexist. It doesn't have to be this or that. But in the church I grew up in, if you believe, first of all, you're an idiot because you think that you were a monkey who became a human being.
Just overnight.
Yeah, overnight. It just happened. What a moron for thinking that. Those science people are weird. But no, if you believed in the theory of evolution, you were basically saying that God is not in control and God is not real. Hard stop. There's what's in the Bible and that's it.
Literal
to hell with
translation.
You. To hell with you.
Yeah. Okay. So what caused you to stop going to church?
I had started, this would be around 2008. Obama has become president, starting to run for president. It's around that time, 2007, 2008. I'm going to college now, and I have, like I told you before, how it was. Do you remember when I said how it was weird that you would have been weird if you didn't go to church? Like everyone I was surrounded by went to church, like friends at school, they went to churches, and then I grew up in a church. So I had never met anyone who was my age who was openly against religion until I got to college. And I meet other people outside of my bubble. And it was when I started meeting other people outside of my bubble and having conversations that I realized what I kind of secretly always knew was that I grew up around some very weird people. So, having those conversations, opening my mind to new ideas, but also as I started the conversation, as Obama was running for president, I started hearing things that didn't sound right to me and that went against some beliefs that I held true that I also kind of learned from religion. I started hearing things that sounded a little racist, and I started hearing some, sermons started sounding more political from the pulpit. I started hearing from people talking about how Obama was the Antichrist, that
Interesting.
religious freedoms were going to be taken away, that Obama was going to go to war with churches, with religion, because Obama was Muslim.
Which is not true.
Which is not true. We know that's not true. But they would say these things, and there was a fear. There was an intense fear. And you know what happens when people get afraid that they're going to lose something that means a lot to them? You know what can happen. It can be weaponized. And there was all that kind of going around. And I just saw some really crazy things. I heard some really crazy stuff from people that I had grown up around that had taught me. And I started to just think, you know what? I don't think this is the path I need to be around. I think these religious people that I grew up around could cause me harm down the road. Not like harm in a physical sense, but like this could be bad if I stay in this. I don't need to be in this. This is bad. And so I was like, I need to pull back. So I'm old enough to make my own choices, and then I decide that I'm not going to go to church. But I didn't just stop. I tried other things. I tried like churches where there was like a younger, non-denominational, where they would do the younger stuff and they played the harder rock music and the 7-Eleven songs. We called them 7-Eleven songs, like 7 verses, 11 choruses, those kinds of things. But I tried that for a bit, but eventually it was just, this isn't for me. I personally don't need to be around these folks to believe something. So I pulled back.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think to wrap this up, and we'll continue obviously in our conversation next week, but just to wrap up this part of the conversation, I think we should end on what lessons or what values or morals do you think that you did pull out of Christianity just yourself? Like what do you feel like it taught you that you maybe carried through into making like your political decisions?
Yeah. So, not for nothing, I pay attention. And so, I remember learning about Jesus. And I remember watching, I know you probably didn't grow up with this, but growing up a religious kid, there was always like religious VHS tapes. And we had one that was like done with puppets and cartoons and would tell Bible stories with like puppets and cartoons. And I remember having to watch this and enjoying it. But a lot of the stories that I learned about Jesus loved people, anybody. And Jesus's love was great. And he would go around performing these amazing miracles, and he would help people. And he was like almost, growing up a kid reading comics, Jesus was like a superhero. He had superpowers, and he would save people, and he would help people in need, loved everybody, didn't want wars, went into churches and turned over tables because they were doing shady things. He defied kings. He went up against tyrannical governments, the Romans, these kinds of things. Like, he was a superhero in my eyes and these kinds of things. So I took away just remembering like who Jesus was and what he called us to be, which was a good person, someone who cares about the rights of others and wants, the best for everybody. And I feel like that made me a Democrat at the time. You know, when I was looking at going into college, it was like if you looked at the two parties, there was clearly one that followed more of those principles than the other, at least in my eyes. There was one that we care about healthcare for all. Remember the Affordable Care Act during that time? That was something that was going on, which other conservatives looked at as something that was bad. Like, we're trying to provide healthcare for everybody. You know, just we're trying to be more open. They were being more open. Gay marriage was big during those early 2000s. So there was one party that was kind of living these standards, I guess, or these ideals that aligned with what I believed personally that a Christian should be. And there was a party that did not, in my eyes. Does that make sense? I kind of felt like a rant, but that's kind of,
No, it
how
does.
I ended up there.
I think I obviously wasn't in it as long as you were, and I had a somewhat transition into Buddhism before, picking up the Bible again recently and rereading it. But I think of all the religions that I've been in, the things that I've taken from them are things like we should all have equal rights. We should all be caring for each other. Love thy neighbor was the thing that I got out of every single flavor of Christianity that I ever took part in. And in Buddhism, there are similar principles, just caring for others, taking care of the people around you, and living a life with a view not just of yourself and your neighbors, but of the whole world, and just wanting everyone planet-wide to be taken care of. And I think that's ultimately what led me to getting a degree in political science and human rights and to being a Democrat, though. As someone who was raised in Connecticut, there was a 99.99% chance that I was going to be a Democrat anyway.
You never had a choice.
No.
That's interesting that I growing up made a political switch. You have not. You have stayed true to your political affiliation your whole life, whereas like me, as I grew older and started trying to figure out who I was and what I believed, what my moral code was, I made a switch. I was like, oof, this ain't for me, boys. And I had to make a change.
Yeah. I think I know we've talked about this a little bit before, but just growing up and in school, we were encouraged to take a look at the world around us and to act when we saw things happening that we thought were wrong. I remember protesting things that were happening in Darfur in high school because our teachers were like, we see that me and my group of friends are upset about that thing. What do you want to do about it? And we were like, we want to spread awareness. We want to write letters. We want to, we just want to do something. And so they would kind of facilitate that and allow us to follow those threads. So props to the Mansfield school system back in Connecticut, because they made me this way. But so did Christianity, and so did Buddhism and the things that I was studying at the time.
I'm trying to think what made me this way. Maybe Christianity, at the end of the day, maybe it did have a profound effect on me in a way, because I believed strongly that we should be like Jesus. And although I don't go to church anymore and I don't really follow it at all, I mean, maybe those lessons about Jesus all those years ago really did stick, because I'm trying to think what made me not smart enough. I don't know what made me want to leave.
Conscious enough.
Thank you. I was looking for that word. Thank you. Conscious enough to do that. Could have been college. I mean, like I said, I never escaped my bubble until I went there. So when you're in the bubble, even though I always had these things in the back of my mind, because I always had these things in the back of my mind, it was always almost like I was the problem. It was presented as I was the problem. I was the one who was getting in trouble. I was the stubborn one. I was the one who was pushing back against something that I shouldn't push back against. It was wrong to do what I was doing. It was wrong to question. It was wrong to learn. But when I got outside the bubble, I realized that everyone inside that bubble, they were strange. Because the rest of us, the world outside of that, was like, no, these are very normal things of what you're doing. You are questioning is a very normal thing. There's nothing wrong with that. Learning is the appropriate thing.
College was validating for the fact that you were seeking knowledge and you could actually find some answers there.
Yeah, because I spent a lot of my childhood feeling like I was wrong. There was something wrong with me. I was being the problem. And in college, the people I knew in college, the teachers I knew in college, they kind of reaffirmed that, no, they're the ones who are in the minority. So maybe that had something to do with it. Getting outside that bubble, for sure.
Well, I think that's a good place to leave it for this week. And We can pick it up again next week with some discussion of the Republican Party, the Democratic Party, our favorite dear leader,
That should
Donald
be fun.
Trump, and just how we feel our values have led us in the current political climate and how we can make sense of how Christianity is leading others as well. We'll be back next week. New episodes every Tuesday at 6 a.m. on Spotify, YouTube, and YouTube Music. Until next time.
Take it easy.